Hello, my name is Jack Birchall, and today I'm doing a collaboration with Nathyn Brendan Masters from his main channel, TimeCode Mechanics. I'm going to be doing a coloration of a piece of his work. This is a comic book cover for a book called Karma that he did, and I'm going to do a paint of it, and then on his channel you will find a video where he shows how he drew it, how he came up with the image. So hopefully you'll watch through this video, and then at the end of this you'll check out his. I also want to mention that there's going to be a second part to this video. This is a project that will definitely take me 2 videos, so at the end of this video there should be a link to click to go watch part 2. So let's get started. First I'm going to hit F a couple of times so that I can really move around the artwork and get myself all situated here. This is the basic artwork, and I'm going to look at layers, and it looks like I've got a layer here with some color notes. So let me just go color notes. Just create 3 new layers real quick. I can just make those disappear. Looks like as inks. And here's the cityscape. Moon colors. Alright, let's get started. So my very first thing, I think I'll just start from the back. I'm going to make even the background disappear. I'll just label that sky, because I'll paint that later to look like the sky. Start with moon colors. Hit M for marquee. Hold shift and hit M again to get a circular marquee. And I'm just sort of guesstimating here. I think it's going to be about like that. I'm holding shift to get a perfect circle, and I'm sort of roughly approximating the size of the moon, and then I'm going to use my arrow keys to kind of move it over a little bit.
All you got to do is just tap it in.
I didn't quite nail it, but I can go up and expand it. So I'm going to hit select, modify, expand. Let's go 3 pixels. I don't know what the size of this image is. I'm going to go up to image, look at image size just real quick. So it's at 300 dpi, which is print settings, print dpi. And all right, looks good. Just cancel that. And actually I have a color here that I kind of like, at least for the beginning. Hit G for paint bucket, and maybe let's make that a little bit lighter and a little bit yellower. So I'm going to go with that. Maybe even a tad lighter. This doesn't really matter, because the very first thing I'm going to do when I'm coloring is I'm going to do what's called flatting. Flatting is when you essentially just try and separate everything out, what's called color seps. Separate everything out into its constituent colors, or just flat colors that I can then play around with. Here, modify this again. Expand just by like 3 pixels again. That's probably enough. I'm just going to hit Shift F5 to fill with the foreground color. There we go. Now I'm going to move on to city colors, and let me just hit L for lasso tool. Do a quick lassoing of some of the major building shapes. I'm not going to worry about what's directly behind any of the figures, because they'll just kind of disappear in the next stages of coloring. So let me see what I can find here, and hold Option to make it into a squiggly tool, squiggly marquee. Let's fill that with grab a swatch that is sort of in this general area and hit G on that. There, we've covered up part of the moon. I assume this is a night sequence, so I'll just kind of start with that. Now let's move on to this building here. L again for lasso, and now I'm just going to hold Option so that I can kind of do a quick trace around this building. I'll probably end up cleaning this whole layer up a bit later, but I'm just going to do some freehand. And then back to snapping lines. This is Photoshop CS3, by the way. I have CS5, but it's not actually a legit copy, and it's got its weird little hiccups and issues, so I don't really use it. And I'm not a big fan of the Creative Cloud. I don't really like the idea of paying out the butt forever and ever so I can use a piece of software. I don't like the idea that I don't own it. Hit B for brush. I'm going to use sort of, one of my favored little brushes. All the brushes that I use are ones that I've personally made, and they have all my settings in them. They're very specific to what I tend to use. So anybody who's watching this probably won't be super familiar with the brushes I'm using, but they're all pretty easy to make. So I'm just cleaning up a little bit the color here, and I'm going to hit E for erase. Grab that same little brush there, get a little bit of detail out of it. I'm going to end up making this building pretty striking because it's right in front of a light source, and so I want it to really be super crisp in the final illustration. Since it's backlit, it's going to have that real hard color separation line. Alright, and erase a little bit here, just kind of play around with that. Hold shift to snap lines. Again, hold shift to snap. There we go. Pretty good, pretty good. And let's take that same color. Oh, I guess I'm not going to deal with anything there in front of her face, but I will deal with this little portion. Back to lasso tool, hitting L on the keyboard, and just kind of getting a little bit of that. And I like to work from the background forward. Just a personal preference. Some people will start with the figures, what have you. I tend to like this method. This building, because this is an illustration that is, it's essentially a Photoshop filter over a photograph, there's a little bit of sort of oddness in the way it came out. You can see that the several filters that went over this section of the drawing kind of made everything messy. So we're going to distract from that as much as possible. We're just going to find a nice dark color to fill all this in so it doesn't draw the eye in any way. And this next building, do something kind of a similar color. One of the things about color is I tend to want the things that are in the background to be lower saturation and the things that are in the foreground to be higher saturation. So things sort of pop out at you a lot better if they're kind of bright. And so I'm going to keep the brighter colors here in the foreground, richer, darker colors in the foreground, and I'm going to have sort of more desaturated and slightly blander colors in the background. Let's go up a little bit. Again, this doesn't really matter. I'm just flatting right now, but I don't know. I can't totally help myself. I want to get kind of close. Command D will deselect. So let me just, now here I don't have to be super careful about the building because I am going around several different colored sections, and those sections will act as masks and won't let me pour a bunch of color into that area. So I don't have to be super duper careful here. I just have to kind of catch a little bit. Let's go brighter. Bright, bright, bright. Even brighter. Yeah, okay, there we go. So we're getting a little bit of the flavor of like an old, like 1960s poster, jazz poster maybe. We've got a little bit of a Harlow color scheme going on here. Kind of earthy colors at least to start, and I'm going to add bright on top of this. I want this final image to be pretty bright and peppy, so I'm going to add a lot of kind of sass to the color scheme by the end of it. There. That'll get pretty vibrant by the time I'm done. So just laying down those kind of base colors. I'll deal with some more of this stuff in the background in a moment, but I think now is the time to separate out my characters. So I'm going to People Color, Layer, and back to L, and I'm just going to start my tool and kind of do a little bit of freehand. By the way, this is my first ever tutorial, so hope you like it. Probably not very good at it, but you know, whatever. It's not like everybody is great at everything on the internet.
Just tap it in.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up color notes because she's got several specific colors. Just hit G and hold Option to grab that face color and then make those color notes go away and just fill her in. There we go. This is a lot better. We can get some sense of what the shape is that I'm dealing with here. Hit Command D and make all that go away. Go back to my lasso tool. So this is probably going to be edited together with some commentary by Nathyn on his channel. He's going to talk a little bit about the drawing of this, and I'll talk about the coloring of this, and hopefully they'll come together and make a relatively entertaining video. Hopefully you guys like it. I know that I'm having fun making it so far, reward in and of itself. Now I know her shirt is blue, but right now I'm just kind of flatting. I happen to be flatting in the colors that it will ultimately end up, but I'll talk about flatting in a moment, and you'll see the use and the purpose of flatting as I get deeper into this. The first major thing that I'm trying to do is just establish sort of boundaries of color, because I'm going to be grabbing areas, selecting area, going into the menu and saying collect everything that is similar. So one of the things I want to make sure to avoid when I'm flatting is I don't want two of the same color on anything really. I want to be able to select any individual area of the drawing by itself. So let's bring up these color notes again, and I'm just going to grab there with the eyedropper tool, make those color notes go away, and I don't have to be super careful in some areas just because there's already color there, and the hollow area, the uncolored area which is showing the background, is going to act as a edge. It's sort of a mask, and so when I'm selecting this out, I don't have to be super careful about certain areas. In fact, I can kind of go around here. Once I fill this, you'll see that it doesn't actually end up filling any of this negative area because it's only selecting the area that is supposed to be color. Command D to make that disappear. I'm going to work on her lips a bit. Let's get those color notes up. And lasso tool, once again holding down Option so I can freehand it, and then out here I don't have to worry too much. And I'm just trying to stay right underneath my black outlines. There we go. Bright red lip. One of the things people always get wrong is people think that eyeballs are white, teeth are white. They're not. Almost never. It's really, really rare to find that. You want sort of a nice ivory color. It just ends up looking a lot less freaky. If you paint eyeballs white, they just seem unnatural, and we don't even realize it until we see it. Now I will do the highlights on the eyes bright white later once I get to that point. For now I'm just going to do this, and I'll probably be drawing in a pupil because it looks like, well actually I should check with Nathyn. I don't know what his style intention is here, if the entire pupil is just colored, in which case I'll leave it. Let's see, hit some erase on some of this stuff because that is home skillet here in the background. Let's go to looking like One Punch Man here in the background. Because sometimes the select tool can be a little bit funny, like sometimes you just accidentally let go of the button at the wrong time or whatever, and it's kind of patient, tedious work. I like to work in these little chunks, just sort of select little areas. Shoot, there I went and messed it up. Gotta remember to hit shift so I get that little plus sign when I do this. But because it is tedious, I like to break it off in little chunks. I just am less likely to lose a whole bunch of effort if I do it that way, because oftentimes that can happen. I'm going to change my color here a little bit. That way I can select it individually. Let me just fill this area with a little bit darker color. There we go. So that separation will make coloring easier. We've got a little bit going on there. We've got this guy, the vampire dude, here in the background, so I'm going to work on him a little bit. Clearly I'll have a whole bunch of stuff to deal with in the background. I'm actually going to make the background and the cityscape disappear for a moment. It's just a lot clearer. I probably should have done that a lot earlier. I'm going to assume this is kind of a black leather trench coat. I don't actually know exactly what it is, but we're going to go kind of Morpheus with it, sort of a black, dark brown. Play with that. Okay, here I'll hold and do a little bit of freehanding. Probably have to fix this up with the brush tool in a moment. But happen to know he's kind of a vampire. Let me add this in. Just grab in a little bit of the color of this section. Hit G for bucket. And let's go into the blue section and do sort of the papery blue-white skin. There we go. That got basically everything there. So those are the really rough colors on that. Let's do a little bit of more rough colors on the city. Of course, these are really background colors. I'm going to keep everything pretty desaturated back here. Atmospheric perspective and all that. Little particles of stuff in the air that make things that are far away less bright, less saturated, certainly less detailed. So let's just go for sort of a blue-gray that is a little bit different than the blue-gray of the city block next to it. One of the things that you got to be careful of is taking too much of the thunder away from your main characters in an illustration. You want to keep the background beautiful and interesting and something that, you know, an audience wants to explore or spend a little bit of time looking at. But you want the initial basic read to just deal with your characters so that people can really understand what is going on in the scene. Now I'm going to make the city inks disappear just a moment so that I can grab a couple colors. Go back to brush, turn that cityscape back on. I don't want to get muddy colors. I don't want to accidentally, for instance, I'll just show you what I mean here. If I hold down Option so that I can use the eyedropper tool and I pick a color, you'll notice that there's a lot of different colors that I can accidentally pick. So I want to make sure to pick the purest possible version of this color, because when I use these as masks, I want to make sure that I can select everything that is that color. I'm not going to leave anything out accidentally. So it's really important that I have separated everything so that it is exactly the correct color. Okay, so what do we want to do with this? Well, this is going to be a little bit brighter here in the background. This is like a theater marquee. We're going to have a little bit more going on. It's a little bit closer to the viewer, so we just have a little bit more kind of brightness here. Now we've got a good separation. Of course, I want to throw the sky in there too, so let me do a real quick dark blue color for the sky, fairly desaturated. No, actually, let's go kind of saturated. So back to the city colors. Let's deal with the remainder of this marquee. I'll do a slightly different hair color on Vampire Dude here and get that dealt with. Let's do sort of a dark green up top of this. The light, of course, is underneath the marquee, so there's not going to be that much light on top of the awning. Even though there's going to be light leak from the city and stuff like that, it just should contrast very strongly with the under section of the marquee to really make this feel like a bright and lively place. That's much better. Okay. Front of the marquee probably also has a bunch of light. I'll deal with that later, but I'm just going to kind of do an orange for now. Let's just lasso this general area and get that orange plunked down. It's looking pretty good. This area is a little bit distracting, but I'll mess with that later. Alright, let's deal with this guy's coat and his eye color and hair. So back to the people colors, section off the head from the rest of the body, and here again I can be super loose with my marquee. I can make a real big lasso around it because the color is only going to hit the jacket. So I want this bright enough to indicate the color and so that it still looks sort of shiny, but dark enough to indicate that it is a dark black leather of some kind. Let's go even a little paler. There we go. Groovy. Maybe even a little bit lighter because of course it needs to stand out from the background. And I'll do a little bit of coloring on top of the inks as well, just some brightness there, because otherwise this guy is just going to get completely lost in the background. I can also mess with the background image a bit to make that separate him. I'll figure out there's probably going to be a traffic light nearby or something that'll cast a nice direct sourcey light on him that'll separate him out from the background a bit. And his hair color, let's go into sort of this gray region. Here's another fun little trick not everybody knows. If you hit this little button, that locks it. This will lock the pixels, so now I can no longer draw outside of the outline that I've already established. It will not leave any color on anything but the pixels that I have drawn here. So I can do that. This needs to be even lighter because this dude is pale. Of course, we've got some art errors up here. I'm going to probably tackle those a little bit. Hopefully Nathyn won't mind if I touch up his work a little bit. It's important if you are the colorist or the flatter or any other stage to respect the artwork of the person that preceded you. Illustrating and painting comics is a lot like playing basketball. You can hot dog it to a certain extent, but really it is kind of a team thing. So you do want to give a bit of deference. Whoops, there we go. A little bit of deference to the people who have put in the work before you. If you're coming along late stage like a colorist is, then you don't want to go around kind of poking people in the eye by correcting their artwork for them or anything like that. You know, it's a different thing if an editor has told you to do that or whatever, but in general, leave the artwork alone. Here we go. Let me separate this building out, the edge of this, because there's going to be a little bit, looks like that's a street there, not quite an alleyway. I just want to separate this face of the building from the other, try and get as close to the corner edge of this building as I find a color that is sort of nearby but different enough that it'll pick up. There we go. Let's actually make that darker. Okay, that's quite generically flat. Let's see if there's anything else I can do. Of course, his eyes. Back to people color and brush. And I think Nathyn said he has like red eyes or something like that. Let's just do this for now. I can always change it later. That's a great thing about flats. I'm also going to do his teeth. Again, sort of a pale almond color is best for teeth. You don't want anything to be too white on the page. It looks weird. I'm going to separate these two buildings because this is definitely two. Back to city colors. And I'm just going to pick this line here. Let's get this but brighter. I'm going to get rid of that so that I can grab a good bright color. Let's bring it more solidly into yellow just a little bit. This is brighter, closer to the audience, so we want it to pop a little bit more. These are the real basics here. Everything from this point on, I'm going to want to do a lot of detail and start really working in some light sources and get some kind of gradients going and maybe some texture depending on what happens. So the first thing I'll do is I usually like to grab all my layers which don't need to be there, and I'll just group those together, and I'll just label these. I think they're all text, so I'm going to just call them text layers. Now I'll take the actual artwork, which is all of this, and I'll put it in its own group, which I just call layers generally, and I'll leave that group open. This just leaves everything that I'm working with a little bit cleaner. In fact, I'm going to even separate these by taking city and sky, all of these layers here, and group those together and just say background. Great. Now my layers panel is a lot cleaner. It's a lot easier for me to focus on just inks and colors. Now inks I don't want to accidentally draw over, so I'm going to just lock that layer. I'm not going to move it. I'm not going to be able to paint on it. If I try to, it's going to give me a little warning that tells me don't do that. So that lets me be confident that I can just jump in here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the color layer, and I'll just color people color copy is fine, and I will hide the original. That way, if anything screws up, I can just come back and start over if I need to, or at least I have sort of a principal layer there. So I can start playing around as much as I want with this. I'm just going to first decide there's going to be a rim light on her face. This is a city. It's vibrant. I'm going to assume that some of these windows have lights on in them, so she's going to get a rim light there. I'm also going to decide that there is a traffic light just off screen here that is going to cast a little bit of red light. So we're going to have some red light mixing on here, red light on her arm, a little bit of red light on him, and that'll give him a red rim light. This is sort of specifically because he's a vampire, and I want to kind of illustrate that to a certain degree. This guy with his frowny face, he seems like a little bit of a dark figure. So I'm going to kind of keep him a little bit underlit. I'm going to create a big shadow region in the middle of his chest. This, of course, will separate him from her. She seems like a much brighter, kind of vivacious character. So we'll kind of create a little bit of a psychological difference between this guy and her. And we'll do that with lighting and color. And I'll tinker with the background, but honestly, I'm not going to do a huge amount of coloring on the background just because it needs to be, it comes from a photograph. It kind of works best if it's just got those kind of flat colors that are kind of bright. But I'm going to tackle a lot of that in part 2, so stick around for that. Should be able to click a link on the end card to go to part 2, and also to go to Nathyn Brendan Masters' channel, TimeCode Mechanics, so that you can take a look at how he drew and composed this image that I'm coloring. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot.